You're listening to Taking Care of Business with Marty Pay and Clay Kerner on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.
I like this song, Marty.
Yes, a little Ray Charles. We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180 with our in-studio guest, Cathy Abernathy. We've got Bob on the line, but before we get to Bob, I've got two announcements I want to make. One is, as we all know, Monday is Martin Luther King's birthday, and there is a community breakfast going on 8:30 to 10:30, and that'll be at the Martin Luther King Community Center at 1000 Owen Street in Bakersfield. Tickets are $20, and that's at 8:30. And then the second announcement I'd like to make is we're expanding a little bit. Our show is, Clay.
It is it?
Yes, we are also going to be on KERI 1410, 1 to 2 on Wednesdays. We're just going to normally play our weekend show, and that'll happen as of January 26th, so we'll be on twice a week. So
pretty exciting.
Yes, it is. Bob on line one. Bob, you had a question for Cathy Abernathy?
Yeah, I'm interested in this rather odd paradox that we're being put into by Governor Brown on transferring the bulk of the heavy lifting that has been traditionally performed by the state onto the county government, such as I'm hearing rumors that the governor wants to transfer the responsibilities of parole from the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation into a new component called probation and parole services in the county. And we have, like down in Los Angeles County, they've had such a scandal in operating their own probation department that adding on the parole component, to me, I think would be, it wouldn't be workable. But is this based upon the fact that everybody wants services but nobody's willing to pay for it?
Good question, Bob. Cathy?
Well, everybody wants some form of government service, but they don't think the price tag should be as high as it is. That's the main problem with government services. They immediately say, oh, you folks aren't willing to pay the tab. No, we're not willing to pay your tab, which is way too high and way too steep and way too generous. But what the governor's plan is, he's going to have another election. He seems to be enraptured with voters running the legislature. There's a better solution than that. But he's going to have an election in 2 years for the counties to be able to vote that you can increase bonding and all of the things and just have a 55% of the vote instead of 2/3 vote. He's going to try to make it easier for counties to get in debt more, basically. The solution to all of this, one of the solutions, but a significant one, we believe, and Shannon Grove has been a big advocate of this, and I think you won't see this come out of the building because nobody in Sacramento supports this kind of an idea, but that's to go to a part-time legislature. These folks are up there. In fact, right now the race is how many bills can you introduce as quickly as you can within the next 3 weeks, and that's what they do. They generate stuff.
Yeah, now Texas has a part-time
Texas does, and they're a large state. Florida does. They're a large state. They meet every other year for, maybe it's 3 months, but it's not 3 months where it's, if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But you have a real job. You actually live under the laws that you're passing. You actually might change them because you know that unlike the folks in Sacramento right now who live in a building with no law, except the speaker's law, that they come back home and they have to actually make a living off the laws that have been passed in that state. And so they have an incentive to make it work right. Right now the incentive is, well, we are government. We legislators are in the government. It's pretty sweet. We don't see any reason to change, and we spend all day with other people from government. And so if you had part-time, they'd spend every day 90% of their year with the people that they are representing. So that's a solution, but we have to go to an initiative for that. And I think at the momentum will build in the state.
Could I ask you just one more question really quick?
You got the mic.
Okay. About 3 weeks ago, a market analyst by the name of Miriam Whitney, who in 2006 predicted the 2008 adjustable rate mortgage disaster, and everybody in her industry thought that she was crazy, was interviewed by Steve Croft on 60 Minutes, and she indicated that within the first 2 quarters of this year, that California and 7 other states, including Illinois, Indiana, well, anyway, there's just 7 other states, including California, that we're going to default on all of their bonds. And I was just curious as to what your thought was on that.
Well, we've been hearing that. We've been hearing that California will be there and should be. When you look at what's ahead of us, we're huge debt, and we have high-speed rail, and we have all kinds of pending bond measures that are going to come due here if we continue with them. We've passed, $3 billion stem cell project a few years ago. Has anybody heard from that except the $3 billion? That's all these things come due. I don't know if people think they look nice on paper. They don't realize they actually come due, and that's been the education problem in California. People don't realize that a bond is really no different than a tax. The bills come in. So, we're in deep trouble. All the states are in deep trouble. They were counting on this bribery they get from the federal government. Here's a little money, do this for us and that for us, and stand on your head when you do this, and you can have the money. And that's the way it's been going. And we believe things are changing now with this new House of Representatives, at least.
Let's hope so. Marty.
Let's jump to the feds for the last few minutes that we have here. We were talking a little bit about the election of 2012. Who do you see running as the Republican nominee? And then my other follow-up question to that is, do you think Barack Obama is going to be the Democratic nominee? There's a lot of talk that Hillary Clinton may take a run at Obama.
Well, on the Democrat side, certainly Obama is the most likely to achieve it, and his people will work at any cost. You notice his staff is cleared out to start running the campaigns right now. And I do know from personal knowledge of the folks that are tied into Hillary Clinton in Washington, they have kept all their network alive and ready to go at a moment's notice. So I would put it there when if his numbers went down, if things started going against him in some fashion, if some of these, an interesting phenomenon is in the U.S. Senate next time. There's, I think, 23 Democrat senators up for re-election that are vulnerable, and about 13 of them are really vulnerable, and only 3 Republicans are vulnerable. So if that Senate turns on him somewhat, that could affect his ratings too, and maybe she jumps in. Republican side, I love Sarah Palin. I like Jeb Bush. I like Bobby Jindal, John Thune from South Dakota. There's some great Republicans. I don't know who's going to put it together.
What about Donald Trump?
There was talk, Cathy, about Obama replacing Hillary with Governor Richardson, I think, out of New Mexico. Have you heard any more about that?
Not really. That's kind of one of those, what did Charlton Heston say? You're going to pull that gun, take that gun out of his dying cold fingers. I think that's the way it would be to take that title from her. But I don't know of that being fact.
Do you see Sarah Palin as the Republican nominee?
Well, I believe that what I want to see from Sarah Palin is to continue to articulate the Republican philosophy, because people understand what we're really about when they hear it the way she expresses it. Whether she's ready to be the candidate for president in terms of the American people accepting her, because the only person Obama and his team attack is her. They're not going after all these other names I just rattled off. Well, why do they attack her? If she's such a horrible candidate for president, they should be boosting her up. They should be, embracing everything she says. And so there's that's why I also care for her to be the candidate, because they're so worried about it. And but it's hard to know. It's hard to know exactly. But I think we will have a strong candidate that will give them a run for their money, and it'll be a wild ride.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on the economy, for one, and what legislative things are passed over the next year to decide who's going to actually be the candidate for president.
Right. And, things are changing. One thing I want to note, though, as much as we have a whole new freshman class, and it's beautiful, we have in the Congress, out of 435 members, about 85 or so new freshmen Republicans. But in the whole Congress, House and Senate, that's 435 House, 100 Senate, 535 people. Half of them are lawyers. The other half are doctors or business people. 6 are ranchers or farmers.
Wow.
I think that's so significant, and I wouldn't even know what the count might be in Sacramento. I'll look into that too. But, we need more people who actually make a real honest living and deliver the products this country has to have, which is food. I'd love to see these folks running for office more too. They have a much more honest approach to the way things should be.
Cathy, thank you so much for being here. We'd love to have you back, because we could do this for a couple of hours.
Sure.
So I want to leave us with a quote, because we've got the taxes coming next week.
I got to say one thing before you do that.
Okay.
Congratulations, Marty. I understand you got engaged recently to Shelley.
Well, thank you, Clay. I appreciate that. I'll make this real quick. This is a quote I'm leading into our guest next week. If your government has a conscience, be Gandhi. If your government has no conscience, become Bonhoeffer. And that quote is from Martin Luther King. We'll see you in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio News Talk 1180.